Good morning and welcome to Issues That Matter, Care for Kids, Care for Yourself. This event is brought to you by Snow Isle Libraries and supported by the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation. We are so pleased that you are taking the time to join us here this Saturday morning. The situation that has created the need for social distance and coming together here online instead of in person has also given us the topic for this year's Issues That Matter series, Pandemic Pressures, Supporting Community and Family Mental Health. We have all been feeling a bit disconnected, and in the midst of that disconnection, we also need to figure out how to take care of ourselves. How do we do this? How do we balance being on top of everything and also taking the time we need to be in a quiet place and take care of ourselves? How especially do we do this when our kids are around us 24/7, not going to school, and we're expected to manage them and be teachers in addition to all of everything we were doing before COVID? Our panelists this morning will answer these questions and as many of yours as they can. During this presentation, your microphones are muted and you can answer your questions and comments into chat. Enter your questions and comments into chat at any time. They will be visible to only the panelists and Snow Isle Library staff, Kurt and Pam, who will be collecting the questions for the Q&A part of this event. We understand this topic can be very personal and we will do our best to ensure that your questions are anonymous. If your question is for a specific panelist, please let us know. Pam will also be sharing links to resources and library information in chat throughout the event. This morning's program will be recorded for later viewing and will be available on the Snow Isle Library's YouTube channel as soon as possible. And now a big thank you to our panelists for taking the time to be here this morning. This event could not have happened without you. Please welcome Keith Binkley, Board President, National Alliance on Mental Illness, Snohomish County, Cynthia Gahan, educator and life coach for National Alliance for Mental Illness. We will also refer to that as NAMI, and Heart Art Healing, and Rita Johnson, life coach, educator, and practitioner at Powerhouse Coaching. Rita, will you start us off this morning?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Krista, and thank you to Snow Isle Library for hosting this event. This is such an important topic. It's always been an important topic, and now more than ever. My name's Rita Johnston, and I work with cycle breakers on addressing and healing the things that are keeping you from your full potential. Some of the things that I specialize in are stress management, building resilience, personal development, and processing trauma. So I have an 18-year background in coaching. For the past 9 years, I've had a private practice, Powerhouse Coaching. And 9 years prior to that, I did coaching and management in corporate America. And about 7 years ago, I really stepped into energy work and trauma therapy. So I'm currently a practitioner at the Trauma Institute of Somatic Experiencing, studying under some phenomenal specialists such as Dr. Peter Levine and Dave Berger, really getting to learn and understand how does trauma sit in the body? How does stress sit in the body? How do we carry this? How does this affect our lives? So I bring that lens to the conversation and to my work. And about 5 years ago, I stepped into diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion work because it's so layered. We were talking before we started about just the many different intersections. So I do work with that, really understanding that adds a layer to the pandemic as well. When you're part of a certain group of people, that you have certain access to things or you don't have certain access to things. And how does that add a layer to what we've all been experiencing? How does that add a layer to our mental health and well-being? How does that add a layer to the stress that many of us have been carrying this past year and beyond? So that's a little bit about me and the work that I do and the lens that I bring to this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cynthia Gahan. Cynthia?
Hi, thank you so much, Rita. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cynthia Gahan, and I'll describe a little bit about my various experiences and then give you a better picture of kind of how I'm approaching this conversation today. So I am an educator. I've been a teacher actually for, 16 years now, both in private and public schools in different states in the country, and all ages from preschool to 12th grade. I also am a educator for NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I teach a basics class. It's called Basics, and it's a class for parents. And this particular class is for parents that have children with exceptionally challenging behaviors, including mental illnesses and or diagnosed and or not diagnosed. I also get to work with, I have to add, I'm an artist by trade, I should say. And I get to work with kids also in juvenile detention centers. And what I really enjoy about that experience is getting to see their point of view. So in all of my work that I do combined, I get to see both sides of the story per se. And so I really enjoy that and appreciate that. I've gotten to do a lot of learning just as an individual, but also as a parent of my own kids. I have 3 kids of my own, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 21-year-old. And we've had some challenging times with some of those. So I've been doing a lot of learning and growing as a parent. So I think that's going to be the main hat that I bring to this conversation, and with some resources that hopefully can be helpful to you all as well. All right. So I would like to introduce now, after myself, Keith Binkley. He is the board president of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Snohomish County.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and amongst you all for, what is obviously a very important conversation and discussion, and especially in light of, what's occurred over the past year. So I'm a little older, and I bring a little different twist to things. So my caregiving experience, I want to bring forward and share that with you. I am a parent of a 31-year-old who lives with a mental illness. So my journey started out just as a parent, and then about age 18, it transferred to what I would say parent / caregiver advocate. So, my goal today is to basically reflect and bring forward some of the experiences that I've learned from 13 or 14 years of intense caregiving. So early in that experience, I was floundering and just overwhelmed and confused. And that's where I learned of NAMI. And at that time, I took a class called the Family to Family class, which is similar to the class Cynthia described called Basics. Family to Family is targeted for caregivers of individuals that are adults or, late teens moving into adulthood. So there's a little bit of a distinction there. So, that was my first, life ring that was thrown my way. I just really was having trouble navigating. And that was the first intro into resources and then support. And, I've stayed involved with the organization ever since, just because I believe in the good work that's done. It's very organic. It's very logical. The reality is, we're all facing incredible challenges. We need to know that we're not alone and that there are resources out there. So my goal today is to while I I don't have direct experience caregiving for kids per se. I do get exposed to the challenges that my children and my grandchildren faced in this. So I do have an appreciation for what COVID has brought to the equation. So, but I think what we have here is we have three panelists that are very experienced and happy to share. So that's where I'll leave it right now.
Great, thank you. I'm so excited to hear from all of you. And as a parent, much of what you says resonates. And I think the greatest thing about our questions this morning is that a lot of it doesn't have to do specifically with COVID. No matter what comes next, these questions are so important. Let's dive right in. I think we all understand that self-care is important, but honestly, it often just feels like one more thing to do. How do we add one more thing when we feel like we're already at capacity? And Rita, would you start that off for us?
Sure, absolutely. I think quite often there is a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of what self-care is. Whenever I hear the question phrased in that way of one more thing to do. So for me and what I teach when I'm working with people, self-care isn't necessarily about these steps, right? It's not necessarily about checking the box. And I'm looking forward to Cynthia and Keith hearing what you have to say about this, because I believe that we'll probably be on the same page. It's really about the essence of how you take care of yourself. It's really about paying attention to the cues. It's about what is it that you need right now? What do you need in this moment? So whenever I'm talking to people and I hear the question phrased in this way, I'm curious, is it the concept of taking time away? Is it the concept of taking a bubble bath? Things like that. And as a society, when we talk about self-care, what are some of the things that we highlight? But self-care, it's about taking care of yourself as a whole person. It's about taking care of your mental health. Do you need a timeout? We're all on technology. And so one of the biggest things that I've been hearing this past year is not being able to shut off or feeling like you have to be on 24/7 and respond. So that is a part of taking care of yourself, setting healthy boundaries. That's a part of self-care, knowing when to shut it down, knowing when to reach out for help, when to reach out for mental health support, knowing when to reach out and connect with your friends. So yes, it can be things that we can add to our to-do list, but in essence, it's about checking in with yourself. Cynthia or Keith, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
I'm happy to respond. I actually had what I think Oprah Winfrey would call an aha moment while you were speaking, Rita, and I'm going to share that perspective. So I have found for myself actually that self-care isn't about adding on more to do. It's about replacing or choosing what to do instead of the other thing, because you can't do more than one thing at any given moment. You're still doing something. Even if you're sitting on the couch staring off into space, you're still doing that thing. So in the moments where you might find yourself feeling maybe either most stressed or down, or those times when you don't really feel your best, choose something or an activity or even just a thought that's going to be more fruitful for you, that's going to cause you to feel more of the way that you want to feel. And I know that sounds simple, but I'll give you an example. So recently I made a shift in my life. I used to want to sleep in as long as I possibly could, to get every last second of sleep I possibly could before I needed to show up, wherever I was supposed to show up. And something happened. I ended up making some changes in my diet and I've been doing a lot of reading and things like that, which inspired me to try out waking up earlier. And when I started, and at first the idea of doing that sounded like torture, But when I challenged myself and I kind of forced myself into that position to choose something different, so set an alarm, wake up earlier, and even at that, go on a morning walk, like that at the time when I was choosing it for the first time seemed impossible. But as soon as I started that, it kind of kicked me into this new cycle and habit in my body that really opened me up to new awareness. So sometimes it can be hard to get it started or get it going. And I'm not saying you have to go, start waking up early, or I just wanted to give you an example of how sometimes making the choice to put yourself in that position to at least begin the cycle can really trigger some new great enlightening moments for you. So there you go.
Yeah, and I'll tag on that, and the word I'm gonna tag to is awareness. So, in my intense, caregiving experience, I learned a lot, and I, the thing you want to do is you want to avoid burning out. You want to really have that heightened awareness where when you're seeing signs. I've had forgetfulness, poor sleep. I've had eye twitch. There's a lot of times as a caregiver you'll just want to power through, just but the thing about the reason I want to emphasize the awareness is we don't have like a dashboard, or we don't have a warning light that comes on. All too often we push too far. So part of the reason for bringing forward my experience is just I want others to be mindful of if you don't push yourself too far, because it's very important to kind of build your resiliency, recognize when you're at capacity, you're doing the best you can, but you have to really take care of yourself, and you have to think about the long haul. You need to think about just you'd like it just to be done and move on and taken care of and packaged, but a lot of times you just gotta think about what is my long-term plan for the well-being of myself and the well-being of the people around me that I love. So
I love that all of us have this common theme, this common lens of it really is about paying attention to yourself as an individual and tuning in. What do you need? Having that awareness, making a choice.
Yeah, and I think that the neat thing is that it seems like we have evolved in our society where we can more freely have these conversations. It is okay to not feel okay, and it is important for us to, find resources, lean on each other, find support. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the, my definition of a evolved society is where, we can freely have powerful conversations and freely be there for each other.
I would love to share a quote because Keith, you said something about do the best you can, right? And this is one of my most favorite quotes. It's by Maya Angelou. Let's see if I can hold this correctly. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. It's one of my favorites.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that quote. Keith, you mentioned the other people. You mentioned when we're caregivers, and I think we run into this as parents, as partners, as caregivers. We think about others a lot, and sometimes we think about ourselves through the lens of those others. As a parent, how is self-care not selfish or not seen as selfish? And if we have to, how do we make the case with our partners for this self-care and time for awareness?
I think it's so I'm a scientist by nature, so my default is to talk a little bit along those kind of lines. But I think you just you really need to think holistically and think, how am I gonna practice self-care and take care of how am I going to bring forward the best version of myself for my entire life? What, and what tools are going to help me to do that. So I think it's everybody wants to bring forward the best version of themselves, but sometimes we don't know, how exactly to do that. And you definitely I'll just state it again, it's important to think about the long-term trajectory, because life is a journey, and there's, kids that are 8 will be 18 and 28, there's challenges that come, through life, left and right, and they're random and they're not always predictable. And you want to be, nimble and resilient and equipped to do the best you can. And part of that is, within the household, you want your fellow family members to, do the same. You want that for everybody. So, I would say in a conversation with your spouse or your partner, you want what you want for yourself, but you want the same type of thing for them as well.
Can I piggyback off of that, Keith? I was going to say, actually, self-care is excellent modeling for your kids. So in this, some of the readings I've been doing recently, it's so important that, well, first of all, our kids are learning from us, whether we try to teach them intentionally or unintentionally, they're learning it all. And so them seeing us taking time for ourselves to be that better version of ourselves, and seeing what it's taking for us to be that better version of ourselves teaches them to do the same. So if you want to try to enforce those coping skills in your kids, I would say show them then how to get to that better version of themselves. What can that consist of? What formula does that take, for them as well?
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in here, Cynthia. I second what you said. So I have a 12-year-old, and when she was really, really little, I introduced this concept to her. I forget what the name of that game is with the gems, like Bejeweled or something, where you try to align the gems. So I shared with her, there's this concept. I have some chronic illnesses which cause fatigue, and so personally, I need to rest a little bit more. And so there's, if you're familiar with the concept of spoons or being a spoonie, where you start the day with a certain amount of spoons, and you have to be mindful, you have to pay attention to how you use those. So just getting up out of bed is using spoons. So I introduced that with the gem concept to my daughter when she was really, really little. We all have a certain amount of gems, and every single thing that we do, when we check email, we are using up some of our gems. When we go outside and we interact, we're using up some of our gems. So I was able to model that, just like you said, Cynthia. And so now at 12 years old, she has that concept, and she will ask me, are you low on gems? And I say, I am. And so, we've built that communication. We've been very, very open about it. And she does the same thing. She'll tell me, I'm low on gems, I need to eat, or I'm low on gems, I need to rest. So I love that. And then when I think about this question that you asked, Krista, I kind of think about it two ways. So one, if there's the need to make the case to your partner to take care of yourself, I think that that's a different conversation. I think that that's a deeper conversation about the relationship, not just self-care. So that's kind of part one. And then the other thing that I think of when it comes to this question of how is self-care not selfish, it is tremendous responsibility to care for another human being. As a parent, as a caregiver, whether you are caring for someone that is older, someone your age, a child, it does not matter. This is tremendous responsibility. That if this is your responsibility, wow. So it is your duty to take care of yourself. You know, like Cynthia said, like Keith said, it's your duty to model this behavior so that this person, this being that you're taking care of, can go out in the world and take care of themselves and model it. So I think there's multiple layers to this. It's your duty, modeling it, and also the deeper conversation about your personal relationship with your partner.
Well said.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate diving into some of the tensions around these topics. And I think another aspect of these wonderful people that we love, that we get to take care of, we love them so much, and yet being around them 24/7 might be new for us this year, for some of us. And sometimes I think with the world locked down, it can be hard not to start feeling some resentment. And then guilty for that resentment. So now we're doing the layer cake again. What are some tools? How are some ways we can break this cycle or consider those feelings?
Boy, I'm going to look at Cynthia or Rita to
I'll
really
start.
jump in.
I'll start. So I would say, yeah, there are lots of great tools, right? I mean, definitely boost up your self-care, find what works for you. I personally have found that educating myself is really, really helpful. And I tend to do that by possibly, joining classes or joining other groups, hearing from other parents, plug yourself into the parent community. And hear what they're saying, knowing that you're not alone and that everything that you're experiencing is totally normal and a part of this big beast that we're all, dealing with, can actually do a lot, really, really help you. I do want to take a moment to put a plug in for a couple of 3 books that I have found extremely helpful, and again, reading might not be for everybody. But if you find yourself in that, having that opportunity, I highly recommend it. And so one here is called The Mastery of Love. Let me try to show the author, by Don Miguel Ruiz. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Really
So good.
super empowering, very, very empowering, breaks it down. I love how he breaks it down in very practical terms, just how important it is that you take care of yourself. But I also want to add The Journey of the Heroic Parent. This one I love, that has wonderful vocabulary, even for you to be able to use with your kids. So when you are in these challenging moments with them during this, during this lockdown, this is really, really, it's just got great scenarios and again, very useful language for you to use. As you can see, I've gotten a whole lot out of it. I can't bookmark it enough. And then I've got one more that I've been reading recently that has been super helpful. Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And these things, all of these, again, these readings, this information really just kind of helps put into logical terms the things that we are experiencing that involve very messy feelings and emotions. And it can just help to get a handle on all of these scenarios. That's what I have.
Thank you for those. I wrote them down. I love to read. I'm a vivacious reader, so I haven't read 2 of those. I'm looking forward to it. To answer the question about feeling angry, awesome, great that you are even feeling something. So can we just validate and normalize it? Keith, you mentioned that earlier. Let's have an open conversation. Something that I see a lot in my private practice is people have been carrying things with them for years and years and years, and they come into the office and they're stuffing their anger down because they don't feel like they should be angry or not allowed to be angry. And then when they share their experience, well, of course you're angry. I can see how you would be. I can see how, many people in that situation might feel that same way. So normalizing and being open about what we're experiencing, I think is something that we need to do more of. Of course, you're angry that you are stuck with another person, even if you love them, right? We love our kids and we need a break and we need time to fill our cup as well so that we can nurture them. So of course, and we're dealing with layers of trauma and we're dealing with a pandemic and we're glued to our screens quite a bit. And many of us are dealing with an increase in anxiety and many of us are dealing with not being able to go. So it's like, and, well, of course you're angry. I can see that. That's valid. Let's normalize it. And this question came through as guilt instead of shame. So that's another great thing, because if it were shame, it would be, I am bad for feeling angry, versus the guilt, which is, I feel guilty. So there's, again, layers in that too, but just recognizing like, it's okay to feel how you feel. It's a normal range in the human experience. And if we're going to squash feeling angry, then we're also at the same time squashing our ability to feel joy. We're also squashing our ability to feel happiness if we won't allow ourselves to be fluid in a normal human experience, the normal emotions. Keith?
Gosh, I'm just like, it's wonderful just to listen to you. I mean, just it's clear that you know what you're talking about, because it's just you're very articulate and it just is very fluid in the way it flows. So for me, being on the receiving end of it, I'm just going like, oh gosh, that just so resonates. So thank you. Thank you both.
Yes, thank you. I love that we can wallow in the mess of our emotions, and that's okay. Sorry, Keith, I think I cut you off. Go ahead.
And when Rita was talking about the ands, my stepson and his family, they got lice in all this. I was just going like, in the midst of all this, you then have to deal with, I was just going like, that's not fair. That's not right. But they got through it. But it's just their tests. I think we're going to learn a lot. We are learning a lot. We're going to come through this. I'm optimistic. I think that we're going to there are going to be dimensions to ourselves that we just never knew, they're opening up, and it's just going to equip us that much better for the future and future generations. So that's a good thing.
Well, then just to go ahead, Keith, sorry.
I was just going to say the conversations, they need to just be free. We just need to be real.
We do, because what happens is, if we can't even acknowledge our anger, where does that go? It stays within the nervous system, and it affects all of our other systems and our physical health. So then that affects our mental health and it affects our relationships. So it's really important to, you're angry. Let's validate that.
Well, lice would certainly make me angry at this point. I think, another, many of us, like, we think we've got it down. Like, okay, this change, I've got it, and we've got it down. We've gotten our routine, and then something changes, and everything's disrupted again. Right now, schools are going back to some form of in-person learning, in many cases, or offices that have been closed are reopening. And there's going to be perhaps less work from home. What are some specific tools or examples or practices to help us find the stamina and maybe time, but really that stamina and time for the self-care within this constant change and disruption of routines and the definition of normal?
Yeah, I can start this one. One of the biggest things that I like to do is try to not add anything else on your plate. We are already dealing with so much. So I think at a basic level, one of the things that we can do to take care of ourselves is what the three of us have all been talking about, is just having an awareness of how things are affecting you, having an awareness of when you think that you are in a flow and something shifts, where's your baseline? Where's your level of resilience? How do you respond to that change? Do you notice that your eating habits change? Do you notice that you start to become more tense? So being aware of how you carry change and how you flow through change and how that change affects your body, how you're carrying it. Jaw tension is something that comes up a lot. Tightness in a lot of gut issues because the stomach clenching. So having an awareness of, okay, I have a change coming up. Okay, we're about to make a shift. Just noticing how am I entering this shift.
I'll follow. Rita, I smiled huge when you started speaking because I was going to say, keep it simple. That's my response. Just keep it simple, including, with the mindfulness and being aware. And that's all really mindfulness is. Sometimes people use the term mindfulness and feel like it's this, kind of guru-ish, kind of ritual or practice, but really it starts with just being able to be aware of what's going on. So that's a really great tool.
And I think it's good to, along the lines of being present, and just having this awareness. I think that our tendency is to, whether it's social media or the news, our tendency is to fill up with some distractions that are really, not good for us. So I think it's, if the warning bells are going off or the tachometer is close to red line, I think you just need to kind of triage your world and just go like, this is just really not good for me. I know, like, for instance, I had a daily ritual of first thing in the morning, watching the news as I got ready. And I just realized that's not a good exercise for me. It's just not a good practice. So I've eliminated that, and it just starts my day on a whole different way. So I'd say, you can restructure your life any number of ways, but when you have that awareness, you can kind of look at the canvas and say, I'm going to paint it a little differently.
Ooh, I need to jump in. Perfect segue. I was going to add creativity. Creativity really, really helps. Anything that you can be involved in that involves creativity, where you are getting to make choices, just design choices or creative choices, like, it could be painting, it could be, crafting of any kind, but it can also be, even, my husband plays golf. For him, that's a really creative action. Because he's having to determine, with some type of strategy, right? which way he wants things to go. And I used to think as a wife, like, oh my gosh, like, is there anything else out there that takes that long? Does he really need to be away that long? Well, that's really great self-care. Guess what? He's got great self-care strategies. And in fact, yes, it does help him to reduce those, anxiety levels in general then on other days of his life. So anything that you can do that's, even active, to kind of get your juices flowing, I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's turn to some questions from the audience. And this kind of builds on this. Here's one. Because of COVID, the kids' schoolwork, my office work, all the family stuff is being done in my one small house right now. I feel unorganized and frazzled doing any task. I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. What is a practice? What's one exercise? You've mentioned the removing the news or waking up earlier, going for a walk. In that moment that we're like, what is one thing, an exercise that we could do to get out of that overwhelmed state?
Stop what you're doing, shift, do something different, even if it's just for 30 seconds, noticing that overwhelm, noticing how did you even know that you were overwhelmed to begin with? Was it the racing heart? Were you not able to think? So I think whenever we start to notice that, if we can just stop and go back to that acknowledgement, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, and see if we can do something different, even if for a moment. Breath work is really great. Stomping your feet is really great. Getting some sort of movement, maybe just go outside and walk around the house once, but stop what you're doing and allow yourself to shift, because it'll shift your energy as well. It'll help shift your nervous system too. Cynthia, I'm curious what you have to add.
Yeah, I was going to say breath. And there's one that I love to do that I think is just really simple. It tends to help with kids as well. And I find it easy. I'm not quite sure what it's called in the professional books, but it's basically just take a deep breath in and hold it for like 3 seconds, so that it forces you to have to hear everything else around you. And sometimes it's just silence, and that's okay. And as soon as you're done with those 3 seconds, just release it. But when you release your breath, release it in a controlled way and all the way out. And for me, it's kind of a reset. It just totally stops everything I was doing inside my body, outside my body, forces me to have to be listening and paying attention, and then letting it all out. It's very relaxing and soothing for me. So I would recommend, in the moment, in that very, very moment, freeze and pause and do that breath.
And here's one of the reasons the breath works so great, is because whenever we are feeling overwhelmed, our nervous system has just been triggered. So the sympathetic nervous system, which is the go, it's like, okay, you need to protect yourself. So when we can take that deep breath, we have now activated the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, the brake. That's like, okay, you can slow down. So it keeps us from going into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, to sort of balance out that overwhelm. So yeah, I love the breath. I love the breath.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit on some key points. Awareness, acknowledge it, own it, feel it, stop, breathe, speak to it. I am feeling overwhelmed. It's kind of like a process, and once you kind of go through that, you already are feeling the benefits of just going like, this is where I'm at, and this is, I gotta take a break, I gotta take a walk, I gotta have a timeout. Yeah, I think earlier on when you mentioned timeouts, I was going like, yeah, timeout is taking a whole new meaning. I love the term timeout. I want a timeout.
Oh, I want to add to that, these things are also practices, really. You have to try it more than one time too, for it to get the biggest benefit out of it. And, you know, so if you try it one time and you feel like, ah, yeah, it's about the repetitive and the continual system of, I want to call it a support system for yourself that you're building and you're creating over time. So don't feel like you have to go out tonight in one night, you know, or one day, you know, read all these books and start all these new routines and all that stuff. It's not about that. It's about slowly being aware and then slowly taking these steps to build this entire network for yourself. And so, so that's okay. Do what you can. Just do what you can right now. Mhm.
Yes, Cynthia, that is such a great point. I hear that. This is where I get excited because I hear all of the time people, well, they berate themselves and feel really, really guilty. It's not working. It's not working. And again, my train of thought is you've spent 30, 40, 50, 60 years responding to things in a certain way. It takes practice to retrain yourself. I love that you said that. Thank you.
I think this next question was related to the recognition that the news wasn't working for you. And interestingly, that is something I've also done, is just stop doom scrolling. Someone asked, how do you recognize the unhealthy personal habits? Maybe
Say
in
that again.
ourselves, but maybe in our kids too, considering that, you know, we're taking this parenting lens. How do we recognize unhealthy personal habits? Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
You got it. No, I just didn't hear it.
I have a couple of things that I can say in response to this. One is be honest with yourself. You have to, well, get back to your awareness, right, of what's happening with you, and be honest with yourself. Is that really, really what you want? Is that what you want to be feeling? Is that what you want to be experiencing? And with your kids as well. So something I want to say from the kids' side is that, you know, as parents, we sometimes get into the pattern of, let's see, how can I best put this, of expecting that our kids are not going to be telling us the truth. And there's two things about that I want to say. I was wrong as a parent about that. Actually, kids, more times than not, are actually telling some version of the truth. And what's happening is they are looking for ways that they're kind of feeling the waters and testing out, you know, well, okay, which version of this is gonna be safe for me to say out loud, or safe for me to report, or safe for me to, you know, communicate somehow. But in what I'd like to add to that is also that they're more often truly wanting to do better, truly trying to do better. And the behaviors that sometimes come out in negative ways are just a byproduct of the challenges that they're experiencing along the way. So the negative behaviors are not necessarily intentional. They are not programmed to, you know, make your life miserable. They are looking for help. They need help. They need help. Those are ways that you can identify as a parent that they just need more support. So I felt the need to say that. And I think I'll add one more thing. So in that event, helping your kids to also become better aware of when they're not having the experiences that they're wishing to have, like joy and satisfaction and success and confidence and all of that, and rather the other, you know, the reverse of that, right? All of those negative feelings that just don't feel good. They're not for no reason. They're there. They're alerts. They are alarms. They are alarm. It's an alarm system. It's telling you, oh, okay, you need to be looking at this. You need to be trying something different.
Absolutely. I agree. It's, if it doesn't make you feel good, that's insight as to maybe I need to look at this habit and see what else. I was on a panel earlier this week, and one of the questions was, you know, alcohol feels like a treat at the time, and then I feel like crap the next day. Well, that you feel like crap the next day is insight that this is no longer working for you. So maybe you're telling yourself that it's a treat, but you're really doing it to numb out. So we need to really dive into Is it a treat? What's the intention behind you doing it? So paying attention to how is this making me feel? Is it, am I feeling really good when I do it? Am I doing it for something else?
I've got something else to add really quickly, because it can be hard to notice those things in the moment, right? So many of these behaviors, like the drinking, for example, is a quick, just kind of go to instinct sometimes even, right? And so you might not realize it until later or after the fact. And so reflection is a really great thing to try to build into your routine somehow. Some way of looking back at what's going on with you. One reason I really love art is because it has built-in reflection, self-reflection options, so that you get the chance to look at, you know, okay, what do I want to say about this moment? You know, what do I want to say about this moment right now? And you get kind of a snapshot of what's going on. And so in some of the creative exercises that I do with kids, I build that in and just say, well, you know, go ahead and add in there, you know, right now, which one would you choose? It might be different from which one you would choose tomorrow or yesterday, but right now, which one would you choose? And why is that? Think about yourself, think about it for a second. Why did you choose that one? You know, so try to get more in the habit of reflecting on that, you know, wonder why I did that, or I wonder what's going on there behind there.
I think that's one of the resources that might go in the chat. I shared some reflection questions at the end of the day, or even the beginning of the day, as one of the many tools that we've been talking about tonight of how do we take care of ourselves. Well, here are some questions for you that will help you sort of trigger some of the reflection, or trigger some of the memories, or some of the autopilot that we might have been on throughout the day.
Great. Yes, Rita will make sure that your kind of worksheet of resources gets posted there. Here's one that came in, I think, when we were talking about anger and resentment and guilt. The question is, how do you normalize the anger, guilt, and other negative emotions that have been building up for a year?
I'll start and I'll say building a relationship with it, building a relationship with yourself. If you have children or you have a family member that you're taking care of, would you shun, or would you put aside their feelings? Maybe you would ask them questions about it. If you have a kid, like, what's going on? Tell me more. So when it comes to the anger and the resentment, I would say building that relationship. Oh, I notice that I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling angry because looking around, well, what's the situation? What's going on around you? And just noticing what has triggered those feelings in you. So just one of many, many ways to address it. Keith or Cynthia?
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, resentment is usually a sign that you weren't aware a while back. And it's just, so I think you can, you know, if you get to that, you know, you can learn from that and integrate it going forward. But I think, you know, owning it and speaking to it and diffusing it will help you for the going forward.
I'm gonna refer back to this book that I mentioned a little while ago, and this one is particularly talking about anxiety, but it's a huge parallel here. So in this scenario of an anxiety, one of the first steps to address it is to expect it at certain predictable times. And so if you know that every time that you know that you're gonna have to be home, maybe you know, from work, and it's causing you to, I mean, I'm giving you some real life, my own real life scenarios. I'm having to instead, you know, tend to my kids in their school learning session, when really I need to be, and I really want to be focusing on, and need to be finishing up a project for work. I'm kind of caught between these two places, right? And I start to feel the resentment towards my kids. They're preventing me from being able to complete this other thing that I need to complete. If I can predict that ahead of time, and I know that by helping my kids or having to help my kids, I'm going to feel this resentment, then that will become normal. It will become normal that the resentment is going to show up. But the change happens then in how you respond to that, right? So the fact that resentment is showing up is okay and fine and even normal now because it happens every time. But then how you shift and how you respond to that can be the game changer.
I'm also curious how much of our resentment is because we are used to doing it all and maybe we didn't have clear boundaries or maybe don't know how to ask for help. And so here we are doing it all instead of reaching out, instead of asking, hey, can you take care of this?
Right.
I know that for me, that's something that I've had to learn, and it's something that I see a lot. So when I hear resentment, it's let's take a look at some of your boundaries. Let's take a look at some of your support systems. Let's take a look at how you're using your resources.
Oh, lovely. As a single parent myself, I know it's difficult to, or a solo parent, I should say, to know how to do that. In fact, we have a question from one of our participants that asks, how can you maintain or expand your network of help given the current situation?
Yeah, I
I'm
was
gonna-
just I was just gonna say one little tidbit, and this is just falls in the realm of support groups. There's actually the twist with the COVID is that everything's virtual. So the net result is there are more opportunities and more times. So if you're comfortable doing it virtually, I think you can actually build a network that way. It's a little different. It was hard for an old guy like me to embrace, but I've already, I've definitely learned to see the value of just connections that can be established, with technology and remotely. That's one
Yeah,
option.
I'm gonna build off of that, and for sure support groups. This is when I feel like, hey, Facebook is great all of a sudden. For the first time I joined groups and I'd never been a part of groups before, and they can be extremely supportive. But also remember that getting help for yourself, like with a therapist, is a really great idea always. So I know that can be kind of, tricky territory for some because of some stigma or other reasons, or personal experiences or whatever the case is. But I want to say that, actually right now, there are even some health insurance companies who are waiving the copay fees for telehealth visits. So that can be an incentive maybe if you're, worried about cost or anything like that as well.
Yeah, and I'll just spring on that. I like the way we're doing this. Yeah. But I definitely I got to the point where it was evident that I needed to talk to somebody. So I have, through my work, I have the EAP, Employee Assistance Program. And I said to myself, oh, this is uncharted territory, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And then I would go in, and so I would go in after going it several times. I would go in and go like, yeah, I really don't have that much to talk about. And then, 60 minutes later, I would have gone like, whoa, I guess I really did. So it's just, I wasn't, I went too far, it progressed too far. And I'm thankful I did seek professional help and was able to, kind of, my issue was, what can I control here and what can't I? And so, a lot of the conversation was all around, control, my desire for control, how that relates to my ability to be a caregiver. And so I just, it really was hugely beneficial to me.
I've had this question so much over the past year, especially for people that are single or extremely isolated through COVID is how can I build a support system? Especially when I'm tired, I don't want to log into, yet another Zoom and see more little boxes and things like that. So I second that, reaching out for personal support, building your own personal network of support, absolutely a therapist, a coach, a counselor, someone. And here's a tip, because this was happening pre-COVID, is it was really difficult, especially for certain groups of people, to find someone that they connect with. It was really, really challenging. I know for the Black community, for the communities of color, for the LGBTQ IA2+ community, to find a therapist that they felt could connect with them. So a tip that I want to add with that is, if social media is so huge right now, and it's such a great resource. So if there are mental health professionals that you are connecting with on social media and you're struggling to find a therapist, you're struggling, maybe you don't have insurance, reach out to them. Because quite often we have a network that we refer to. So quite often, like Cynthia said, we're waiving fees or offering things at a sliding scale. So if we can't do it personally, we can probably refer you, to someone or to another network to help you build that community around yourself.
I do want to say something that just popped into my head. Actually, before all of this, I would say, and if you haven't ever done this before, the first step is really opening up. You have to be willing to open up a little bit, and don't be afraid to tell, to talk about, what's going on. So I was putting myself through, all the scenarios and trying to think back kind of more towards the beginning of what I would call my journey. And I remember that moment first of being able to actually tell somebody else what's really going on was really, really hard. So, again, start small, but definitely start. And you can find that, of course, professionals are going to be, really great supporters. But if you can find maybe a trusted friend that maybe you can even shoot a text to, it doesn't have to be a gigantic, hour-long, 2-hour-long, huge production. There are really small ways that, you could even ask a friend to maybe do check-ins with you, or you can have a check-in partner, or maybe your spouse, or, I've recently started opening up a little bit about some of those kinds of inner struggles with my kids as well, to be able to model again for them just what that looks like and how that happens and how that works, for somebody. So just in terms of course, keep it, appropriate. You want to share in a way that's going to be, that's going to teach them more about how to get through a challenge, right? Rather than what the actual challenge, all of the complexities of adult challenges. So be aware that you have adult challenges, right? And kids are still really just dealing with kid challenges.
Thank you. One of those baby step examples that I've been experimenting with during the last year is answering the question, are you okay? Or how are you? Answering that honestly. And that has opened up a lot of different level conversations than I think I was having when that question was asked previously, is just saying, no, I'm not okay, or not everything's going well has been, sorry, I might be oversharing, but I think that was a little baby step, as being really honest in an answer to a simple question. We're talking about parenting. You have mentioned the EAP and NAMI and the course resources, and we've posted a few of those in chat. Are there any other specific local support groups for parents that you can list for us, or that you know of?
I don't have any. I'll
All
think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is where I should probably speak. So I, together with Anne Marie Del Rosario, as well as Carolyn Goza, run a parent support group on the first Tuesday of every month. And it is a NAMI support group. And I think it's being listed right now as a basics parent support group. Now, it tends to be, let's see here, it tends to be geared a little more towards parents of children with mental illness. However, it's not just that either. Really, people who are coming to the support group are sharing frustrations, are looking for support, are looking for guidance, all those kinds of things. And we have really, really great resources that we share also during those support groups. I would also say that if you do end up trying a support group, please, and maybe you didn't feel like it was a great fit for you, just like a doctor, you just go try another one. I highly encourage you to try another one. But support groups can sometimes, feel intimidating when you want to first, try to join. And the purpose of support groups is for you to leave really seeing and feeling and knowing and understanding now that you are not the only person going through this thing, whatever it is. And that others who are also going through this thing are coming to gather to try to figure it out together. That's it. We're just all trying to figure it out together. And so sometimes people are, have figured out some new things that others haven't. And so we share. And that's the nature of a support group. So I can also send you that link if you want to, Krista, and you can maybe share that later, or it might be on the NAMI Washington website under support groups, local support groups. And it's specifically the basics. The one I'm talking about is basics parent support group, Snohomish County.
Cynthia, that sounds amazing. You said it's the first Tuesday of every month, and about how long are the meetings?
Yeah, thanks for asking. They start at 7 p.m. and go until 8:30 p.m. And you don't have to stay the entire time. And some people come and they come and they don't even have their camera on. And some people come and they stay muted and they just prefer not to respond because they just kind of want to get a feel for it first. And they're just absorbing the information, and that's fine too. So really you have control over just kind of how much you interact as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really like working a muscle, right? So it's I think what I've found is every time I dabble into opening up or exploring, or talking with somebody, I'm rewarded. So it's kind of like you take baby steps, then you finally you take bigger steps, and you realize that this is really the kind of thing that I need consistently to just help me navigate the challenges that are going forward. I need to know, what all is in the toolbox, and what are the resources I can apply to, help me go forward.
Oh, yes, I love having tools in the toolbox. So we have exhausted the questions from the audience, and I think we could wrap this up. But before we do, maybe go around, and if you could each share with us your final thoughts or final message on caring for our kids while caring for ourselves.
I'm happy to start. I will just say there's really no right way or wrong way. You just got to start somewhere. And if you feel like you need help, start somewhere. There's no first step that is the only right one. And we're all in this together. You are certainly not alone or the only person who's ever have to go through this. So,
yeah. And I just, for me, the modeling conversation we had today was really big, because you want your children to see that, you're just being real, and you're having a challenge, and you're trying, you don't have to have hold up this facade of always having it together. I think when you cry, or you are frustrated, I think just owning it and modeling it and working through it, I mean, that is a huge benefit for for the future generations. And you know, I can only imagine the level of frustration that, you know, kids are having these days too. So, you know, if you want to you know, work that conversation, you want to be there for them, you want to listen to them, you want to kind of delve into it and come out the other side. You know, I know, like, you know, with my my stepson and his family, the trampoline was the best purchase they made. And they really, it's almost gone from an exercise to a, you know, kind of a therapeutic exercise, that it really, time on the trampoline is good for the soul. And you know, so I think that identifying tool, having conversations, identifying tools, modeling, it's really what's called for.
Keith, I like that you mentioned the trampoline. Something that I try to teach is understanding that when we have a lack of diverse sensory input, then what happens is it creates an increase in the startle response. And so we're startled more often because we're in our homes, or we're startled more often because we're not going out and we're not having these experiences. We're not doing these little things. And when we have that increase in the startle response, we're putting additional stress on our nervous system, which trickles and adds layers. So yeah, get a trampoline, go outside, take a breath, like just do these little simple things to just try to enjoy little bits of joy. So for me, my final thoughts are building awareness, practice, you know, like Cynthia mentioned, it's all a practice. We're all practicing, validating your experiences and knowing that it's not just you. Your kids are experiencing it too. Your friends are experiencing it too. We're all going through it in some way, and it may just show up differently for others. How is it showing up for you? And allowing yourself space to validate that and take care of yourself however you need to, including jumping on a trampoline.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to end this webinar with the thought, as soon as we're done, I think I'm going to take my 3-second breath and then figure out how to do something outside today. I appreciate you all so much, and our audience for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this morning's program and have gained valuable information for you and your family. This is our last event in the winter 2021 Issues That Matter series. Videos of all 6 events and associated resources can be found on our website at www.snowisle.org/issues-that-matter. And finally, in addition to thanking our awesome panelists this morning, we would like to thank the following organizations for their support of Issues That Matter. That includes Snohomish County Behavioral Health Services, Island County Human Services, and the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation. Thank you all and have a great day.